Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Not the Arsenal Transfer Show. This morning it is the Arsenal News Show. You join me now at 8 a.m. as usual, but with it being the end of the transfer window and of course a brand new season, the Arsenal News Show continues and will continue all the way through until December, which we will then restart the Arsenal News Show a month ahead of the January transfer window opening. So thank you, as always, everybody, for tuning in and joining me. It is very much appreciated as per. Apologies for the slightly later start, but it's good to be going now. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box, as always. Matt G, Olu, Paul, A1, Ponaru, AB, Pinnyween, Tony, Jose, Rob. We've got Sweating Merlot, John, Trevor, A1, Hawkwind, Black Shine. Plenty of the usual faces in the chat box. Thank you, everyone that's tuning in as always. It means the absolute world. And without further ado, let's crack on with today's stories, shall we? We start with yesterday's Premier League results. In the early kickoff, Sheffield United drew 2-2 with Everton in a result that probably doesn't suit either team. These two are probably the biggest relegation candidates for the season, and one of them would, of course, wanted to take away all 3 points. Jordan Pickford, though, at the end of that game, coming up with some majorly good and impressive saves. And one of the reasons why he makes his case to be England number one as well. But Everton and Sheffield United getting a point in that game. Brentford also with the same scoreline against Bournemouth, 2-2, except they came very late in the game to equalise in their game against Bournemouth, a game in which Bournemouth were probably the most impressive they've been, I suppose, and with Arsenal facing Brentford in the Carabao Cup in a few weeks' time on the 26th or 7th. We're still waiting for a confirmation of that date. I think it's an encouraging result from an Arsenal fan's perspective. Spurs beating Burnley 5-2. Less said about that game, the better. What I would say is that Burnley obviously going 1-0 up and then dropping 5 goals, not looking the best. Spurs conceding 2 will be something that teams will hold on to from a defensive standpoint, but with Ange Postecoglou now using Son as a central striker, with Brennan Johnson coming in, I think we can expect that Son will be that centre forward. Less said about them, the better. Manchester City beat Fulham 5-1. However, it could have been very, very different. Fulham's conceding their second goal was a clear offside from Manuel Akanji, interfering with Bernd Leno's view of the shot. And somehow, despite that, the referee and VAR decided against ruling out that goal. Erling Haaland came out after the game and actually admitted that he felt bad for Fulham, that goal had indeed stood, and he would have been very angry if indeed Man City had sadly conceded a goal in the same fashion. And it just brings to light once again the frustration, the irritation, everything that we have come to expect from officiating and VAR. Once again, there is another example of absolutely horrific decision making, and Fulham should rightly face an apology for what happened to them in their game. But they went on to win 5-1, Erling Haaland getting plenty of goals once again. Good for those with them in their fantasy teams. And speaking of those scoring plenty of goals, Evan Ferguson getting 3 goals in their game against Newcastle in a very, very impressive performance, and what leaves Newcastle with 3 game defeats on the spin. Very interesting to see what happens now. It was one of my early season predictions that Eddie Howe would be sacked this season, and so maybe if they continue to lose games, that will indeed happen. Of course, they've played some pretty tricky fixtures against the likes of Man City, Liverpool, and now, of course, Brighton. And their upcoming games aren't going to get necessarily loads easier. They've got the Champions League, of course, kicking off in a very difficult group that contains PSG, Dortmund and Milan, but they play against Brentford in the next game. They travel away to Sheffield United the game after that. They are at home to Burnley in the following fixture. You would look at as a game that they very comfortably winning before they go away to West Ham. We're having a good season. They're at home to Crystal Palace, away to Wolves, and then they play at home to Arsenal on the 4th of November. We are the next big 6 team that they will indeed face, but it won't be all the way through until November. I love this from Yomi. VAR standing for Virtual Apologies Refereeing, which is absolutely the case right now. And of course, the game that we haven't talked about that I left till last because it is the best one of the lots is Nottingham Forest beating Chelsea 1-0 at Stamford Bridge. An amazing result for Nottingham Forest, a hilarious result for the Blues. £1 billion can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you 3 points being lost against Nottingham Forest. That's what it can indeed do. Forest, of course, getting their goal and will be gladly taking that back. Forest have been deserved of points this season. 2-0 up against Man United. Sadly, couldn't come away with a result. They fought hard against Arsenal, even though they were easily dominated in that game by Arsenal in the 2-1 defeat. But they did very nearly manage to claw back an unlikely point. And finally, they get the points they deserve this season with that win over Chelsea, who are looking really poor. Moises Caicedo having another mistake in his game as well. As the debate between who's better between Caicedo and Rice, it's not really been a contest so far this season. It's probably fair to say. Arsenal's Champions League fixtures have also been announced. Arsenal, of course, facing against Sevilla, Manchester City. That'd be weird if we did that, wouldn't it? Sevilla, PSV, and of course the last team being Lens as well. But our fixtures have now been confirmed, so we know when they'll be placed. The first game is against PSV on Wednesday, the 20th of September. That is after the away trip to Everton and before the home game against Tottenham in the North London derby. We play on Wednesday and then Sunday for the derby, so that suits us pretty well. The next game is away at Lens in France, only a short hop over the channel, and it's in northern France, is Lens, near Lille, so it's not too bad of a trip whatsoever. We play away to Bournemouth on the south coast before going on Tuesday to Lens. I mean, you might as well just hop on a ferry from Bournemouth over the channel at that point to go to the Champions League game. And it does mean that we've got a nice 5-day break between that Lens game and then the home match against Manchester City on Sunday, the 8th of October. Our next game in the Champions League will be on the 24th of October away in Seville. That will come 3 days after a trip to Stamford Bridge, probably the trickiest two of the game. But then that's followed up by a home match against Sheffield United. So hopefully that shouldn't be. We can put a lot of focus on that Chelsea game. We can make some rotation for Sevilla and then get back strong for the Sheffield United game. I think that away game at Sevilla is probably the toughest game of the group, but one that maybe if you can do well in all your other 5 fixtures, you can afford maybe to come away with a point. The Newcastle away game follows that before then facing Sevilla at home. So we've got a nice away trip to Newcastle, but that is followed by a home game against Sevilla and then a home game against Burnley, which is really good. That then follows an away trip to Brentford, which then is followed by that home match against Lens. So away in the Premier League, just to West London, across a little bit further out from West London, and then a home trip against Lens is pretty good. We then have a few game breaks against Wolves, Luton, and Aston Villa away before we then travel to Eindhoven for a revenge after our defeats in the Netherlands last season on the 12th of December. We then follow that with another home game. All of our away Champions League trips are indeed followed up with home games, which is really good, against Brighton before we face Liverpool, West Ham, and Fulham to round out the year. And hopefully Arsenal will have qualified by that point into the knockout round. So very, very, I think, favourable Champions League ties against good teams, and of course, with some good fixtures around them as well. Am I going to be going? I'm hoping so, but there's never any guarantees in this business. We get to the more worrying part of today's show, and probably the part of the show in which a lot of you have tuned in to find out the information about. Thomas Partey was indeed spotted in training according to the photos that were released by Arsenal Football Club. However, there has been a concern over the player's fitness over the last couple of days, bubbling under the surface, and that was confirmed, and Arsenal will not be too happy about this, I can imagine, by the Ghanaian FA, who have provided an update on Thomas Partey a day before Arsenal face Manchester United. Of course, Arsenal and injury news, they want to keep this as quiet as they usually can because it only helps the opposition. And to be honest, if I'd have found out about this, I wouldn't have been talking about this, but with the Ghanaian FA kind of publishing this information, it is very much out there. So I think, being a news show, we should address what is out there publicly. The Ghanaian FA providing information that Arsenal ace Thomas Partey has been left out of the squad due to injury. According to his club, the player picked up an injury in training and could be on the sidelines for a while. However, the Black Stars medical team is monitoring the situation. The team doctor, when asked about this, said he sustained a groin injury during training on Thursday, August 31st, 2023. He is currently unavailable, as club doctors predict he's likely to be out for a couple of weeks. So they're suggesting to Ghana that it's a couple of weeks. Now, that would obviously cover the international break, so you have to be very privy to the fact that they're saying it's a couple of weeks. As James McNicholas of The Athletic reported, We have not got a full timeline yet on how long he will be out for. I know there's been suggestions of 3 to 4 months online. I'm not saying that they are inaccurate, but it is worth us waiting until we get official confirmation from the club to find out what the extent of Thomas Partey's injury is and what it is. I know there's been plenty of reports flying around and discussing what's going on, but yeah, sadly, it seems there will be no Partey at the game today at all. But yeah, the injury was sustained on Thursday, according to the Ghanaian FA. So that's what they have said. But in terms of what Arsenal might do, we play Manchester United today, as you very well know. And because it's been a chaotic week with deadlines and stuff like that, that we haven't had a chance to do one of our members' preview shows. So I thought what we would do is once again combine the preview show with our morning 8 a.m. show. So we're going to do that. So I think this intro music still is a little bit loud. So maybe cover your ears. But we're going to go to the preview show right now. So, Arsenal against Manchester United in the Premier League today, 4:30 p.m. UK time. Massive, massive game for both teams, and it is expected to be quite the battle indeed. I am going to be there. I'm looking forward to going. I'm looking forward to going to what I think is my first home Arsenal Manchester United clash. I'm not sure I've ever been at a home Arsenal United game. I've been to Old Trafford to watch Arsenal play Manchester United in Old Trafford, but I don't think I've ever seen one at home, believe it or not. It's one of those things where just strangely I've never been able to get to one. So yes, very interesting indeed to see how it goes. I'm optimistic, but Man United have received a bit of a boost ahead of the game, in which is Rasmus Højlund will be part of the Man United squad for this game. Erik ten Hag confirming that. They also managed to, I believe, register their brand new players, Altay Badini, the new Turkish goalkeeper. They've also got Sergio Reguilon, who I think potentially could even start at left back because they are without Luke Shaw and Tyrell Malacia, who are both injured for this game. And of course, Sofian Amrabat was signed on loan in a 10 million euro loan fee from Fiorentina, with the potential to make that permanent at the end of the season as well. So 4 potential new additions to the Man United squad for this game. How they will set up is still very much a mystery, but in terms of how I would set Arsenal up, this is the team that I've gone for, considering Thomas Partey is not expected to be available. Ramsdale, of course, between the sticks. I think after the international break, it'll be intriguing to see how quickly we see David Raya come into the fold for those Champions League games and Carabao Cup games. But Ramsdale very much continues as the number 1. With Partey out, it means that Ben White returns at right back. William Saliba and Gabriel return as a centre-back partnership, and Zinchenko comes into the team. So 2 additions to the back 4 that we find ourselves in. With Partey out, though, and I would have played Partey in midfield. I know that some people may choose to go with Jorginho instead of Partey, but I will indeed be going with Kai Havertz. I think this is a great opportunity to throw him into this game and see if he can respond and give him that type of encouragement. And if he's going to prove us wrong, we've got to give him the opportunities to be able to do that. So I personally would go for him. But if it is Jorginho, I'm not going to be too concerned about that whatsoever. Odegaard, of course, continues in that position that we find ourselves in at number 10. And then the forward line, there was a decision made, because while Saka and Martinelli were the obvious choices, who started at central striker, I know is maybe a bit of a debate. I did put a poll into our Discord server this morning of who should start up front in today's game. And all the people that were up very quickly, an amazing 90+% of our voters chose Eddie Nketiah. I agree with them. All the other votes went to Gabriel Jesus. No one voted for Havertz or Trossard to start up front. I would go with Eddie Nketiah, off some really, really good form at the start of the season, and also been called up to the England squad as well. So really impressive form, really on a high from that call up to the England team. I say build on that momentum, use that momentum. He scored 2 goals against Man United in this fixture last season. Why not give him the opportunity to do that? And I think that is the right way forwards. I just want to let people know that I can see a lot of your people in the chat box are indeed being very disparaging, I think is probably the right word, toward a certain Kai Havertz. You are being monitored. I know who you are. I'm watching you, just in case things go really, really well. I want to see some hands being held up afterwards, just like I will if indeed it turns out to be the wrong choice. So it's not a case of shoehorning Havertz in to this game. It is with Partey out, I think, the way to go. And if Partey was fit, I would have dropped Havertz and I would have played Partey and Rice. I think Havertz is the right player to go with in this game over Jorginho, but maybe it will be Jorginho. If it is, I'll be absolutely fine with that. I'm hoping that Havertz has a brilliant game and certainly makes people be a little bit more humble maybe next time in their picks. Right, let's go to your questions then right after this. Right then, let's jump into the chat box, shall we, and tackle as many of your questions as we feasibly can in the space of what is probably about 10 or so minutes. Let's go. Jack says, will you accept he should be dropped if you're wrong again? It's interesting Jack asked this question because I literally just said like seconds ago, if Partey was fit, I would have dropped him. But because Partey isn't fit, I'm bringing Havertz back into the team. Gooner Jake says, Tom, who gets your screamer for the game? Oh, it's going to be Havertz. Havertz has got to be the guy. I think he overtakes White a little bit now. I'd love to see Kai Havertz get an absolute banger of a goal in this game. Let's keep our fingers crossed that indeed he does. I just hope that, I think a great way to measure kind of what you weight, whether you weight your own opinion over the success of Arsenal, is see how you feel. If Havertz does score today, I wonder if the first feeling is jubilation over, oh no, I'm going to have to come back to the TGT channel and apologize. So I wonder what your feeling is, what happens first, if indeed there is a goal from him. Robert says, what does Havertz offer us? Well, if you give a read of the article that I wrote after the game against Crystal Palace, I'll happily send you a link to that, Robert, if you would like. Get in contact with me and I can send it to you directly. But the amount of hold-up play, the defensive ability of it he brings, his intelligence when on the ball can be really good. I know that against Fulham he wasn't on that typically smart trajectory of playing those quick passes. And I was really critical of his game against Fulham, where he took that ball off Rice and played it back, or he played that ball a little bit loose to Martinelli. And those were really poor moments. But against Nottingham Forest, against Manchester City, and against Crystal Palace, he had some really good points in those games. Of course, was really critical to how Arsenal played in the game away at Crystal Palace. He's also a great target man if we ever wanted to switch things up and not hold on to the lead. You've got Havertz who can come on as your target man up top as well. He gives us something different in the team, but off the ball is really important. And we're not going to have as much possession perhaps in this game as we have had in others. I hope that we do, but I think we are going to be out of possession more against Man United than those first three games. And he's really good for those points as well in transition. So let's see what happens with Havertz today. But yeah, I would recommend giving a read of my piece, Robert, that I did after the game against Crystal Palace to find out all the intricacies of Havertz's game that you might have missed during that fixture. Maximir says, Tom, I've learned from the PGMOL I can apologise every week or not. They don't always apologise, so you never know. You might have to sit on your apologies for now, mate. Gary says, United will have a combative midfield today. I feel we have to match their physicality and energy. Defensively, United are there for the taking. I hope that we go for the jugular. Absolutely. Zoomtar says, Man United's midfield is very weak and slow, so I'm not worried about the pace. It's the attack that I'm scared of. Well, I think you should be scared of Rashford, but Martial, Anthony, I mean, these aren't players that personally scare me. They've been very disappointing, but we are the type of team, as I describe ourselves sometimes, to be a bit of a defibrillator for the likes of people's careers. Bruno Fernandes, we've enabled at times when he's been in poor form to rise up again. Anthony, we obviously gave a goal to on his debut. We need to be aware of these facts as well. Matt says, Evan Ferguson, would you sign him next season? I mean, the way that he's going, I think you'd be mad to kind of say that you wouldn't be keen. I wanted to see what this season he brought. I was really I was skeptical about him before this season, but if he continues on this type of form, it'd be very interesting to see if Arsenal are indeed a team that comes in for him next summer, and how much Brighton, of course, charge for Evan Ferguson next summer as well. Holdini Yomi says, do you think Arsenal fans moaning about Arteta changing tactics is being overly critical? Look at Newcastle getting pumped while playing the same style as last season. This is a question that I was hoping someone would ask. Yes, Yomi. So true. Newcastle haven't changed. The personnel might have changed. Tonali might have come into the team. But overall, they are playing very, very similarly to last season, our Newcastle, and they are paying the price for it. It took them, I think, 24 games to lose 3 Premier League fixtures last year. This year, it's taken 4. Just 4 games. And after that game against Aston Villa on the first game of the season when they won 5-1, there was all this hype, all this furore. Oh, Newcastle, yeah, going to continue. They're going to overtake Arsenal. They're going to get closer. They're going to be, I think a Newcastle fan was on TalkSport or 5 Live saying that, they're going to be the closest competitor to Man City this season. If you're going to lose 3 games in a row, you're not going to be a competitor in a Premier League title race, and that goes for Arsenal, not just us. So yes, this is such an important point. If you stay still, if you do the same thing that you did last season, if you stand still, you will go backwards because teams around you are not going to stand still. They're going to evolve. They're going to change. They're going to improve. So if you want to do the same thing over and over again, and by the way, that thing that we did last season did cost us at times, whether we had Saliba or not in games, it still cost us. We've got to evolve. We've got to change. And we can tinker at the beginning of the season as long as we don't drop too many points, because at the end of the season, the point is that we don't drop off, that we have a strong end to the season. And that's what's really, really important, is so that we evolve and move forward as a team. Tariq, thank you so much for becoming a brand new member. First of all, once again, rejoining the club, if not already continuing with us, and asking the question with a super chat. Very kind indeed. From one Havertz stand to another. I wouldn't say I'm a stan, Tariq. I wouldn't go that far. I'm just a fan of Arsenal, and I'm a fan of giving players time. But Tariq says, from one Havertz stand to another, how many goals and assists in all comps do you think he needs to get to have a successful first season? Well, the thing is he's come in to replace, not out and out, not in terms of style, not in terms of the same position, but he is replacing Xhaka's role, like in terms of Xhaka's kind of space, if you like, in the squad. And Xhaka brought us 7 goals and 7 assists last season. So I think that has to be like the aim for Havertz, is at least 7 goals and 7 assists all across all competition for him to have a successful season. If he gets more, or actually probably one more. So he needs to try and get 15 goal contributions for me to say that he has had a successful season, because otherwise, have we progressed forwards from Granit Xhaka would be the question. So yes, I'd say 15 goal contributions would be my target, Tariq, for Havertz during this campaign. Data Speech says it's time to part ways with Thomas Partey. And this is a question that came up a lot yesterday. He is going to miss games if he indeed is out for the projected 3 to 4 months. If it's only a couple of weeks, like the Ghanaian FA are saying, which I don't know how realistic it is, because we are still yet to get official confirmation and we're still yet to get a timeline on it. But if he's going to be out for a while, this means he's going to miss another Man United game, another North London derby, another game against Manchester City, another game at Stamford Bridge, another game potentially against Liverpool, another game against the likes of Newcastle and Brighton. We can't afford to keep losing Thomas Partey, and a player of that importance to our team, we can't afford to keep losing because of injuries. And I do think that it is a fair question to ask, should we be looking at replacing Thomas Partey next summer, or even in January if we have the opportunity to do it, if we can? Because at the end of the day, we have to rely on our big players, and if they are continually and consistently getting injured, as Partey is, you have to ask that question. So, yes, I think it's a very fair point to raise, Data Speech, regarding the injury status of him. Gunnar Dude says, in my opinion, Vieira deserves to start after the Fulham cameo. The only reason why I'm not starting Vieira is because of the opponent. We are going to be out of the possession for a lot more than you would expect us against the likes of Fulham that we had the ball for in that game that Vieira thrived in. Havertz is a lot better off the ball than what Vieira is, and so I think that might be an asset to the side going forwards in this game. Jorginho gives you control. Like, he gives you a solid passer, progressor, good at penalties as well if he's on the field. So that is obviously something to take into consideration. But I just think that I would like to see Havertz, if indeed Partey isn't there. I think Havertz might be the one to go with. I could be wrong, and I will sit here tomorrow morning with my hands held high in apology if that is the case. But just for now, I would like to see it happen. Let's go to Lee, who says, months ago, you said this is Vieira's make or break season. Do you still stand by? Absolutely, Lee. Every player gets 2. Every new player for me gets 2 years at Arsenal where you have to prove yourself. And if you don't prove yourself after those 2 seasons, if you haven't shown that you should be at the club, then that for me is your time at the club over. 2 seasons is what I give you. That's why Lokonga and Tavares, sadly, are towards the exit doors at this moment in time. They're at the club. I didn't want them in the squad this season, but Odegaard, Ramsdale, Tomiyasu, Ben White, who we signed in 2021, have indeed all proved themselves as we hit 2023. And I'm very happy for them all to be in the squad. And that goes for Vieira for this season. It goes for, Zinchenko and Jesus have already proven themselves, to be honest. But Matt Turner, we decided to move on from. We were ruthless with that. So it shows you that the club have that same kind of rhetoric as well. But I always find it interesting when questions like this come in, though, because I think it's indicative of a misconception that I'm not able of saying if I'm wrong about something, which I feel like I am. So when, Lee asked the question, do you still stand by that? I'm not going to change the point of view on a statement that I've led out saying that a player gets 2 years. I think that is fair, and you have to stand by views like that. And that if they don't work after 2 years, it's the right thing to do in moving them on. Let's do score predictions, as Rancid says. What are our score predictions for today? I'm going for a 2. It's really hard to see us keeping clean sheets at home right now, so I'm going to go 3-1. I was going to go 2-0, but I feel like 3-1 might be what it could end up being for Arsenal, of course. So I'm going to go with a 3-1 scoreline today. Kirill's going for a 2-2, but I hope that it's 3-1 rather. Mark says 2-1. Kiss MYW. How do I pronounce this? KSSMYW? Because I'd love to know how I do it so I don't have to read out the full letters of this. Phonetically spell it for me. That'd be great. 2-1 Arsenal. Owen's going for a 2-1. Trait's going for a 4-1. Nab's going for a 3-2 win. Marcus going for a 2-1 win. Rant is going for a 3-2. Havertz, Saka, Nelly. Gooner Legend's going for a 3-2. Matt says 2-1. Darren says 2-1. Gunnar Dude says 8-0. That'd be great. Jonas says 4-1. Arasilki says 2-0. Paul says 3-2. Blackshine says 3-2. Max Days Black says 3-1. Anne says 10-0. That'd be great. John says Havertz is going to make Haaland look like Aaron Hickey. 4-1 to Arsenal. Steve says, was Aaron Hickey the guy that we were linked to from Bologna? Am I thinking of someone else? I feel like it was John. Krishna says 3-2. Tony says 2-1. 2-1 from Gooner Lad. 2-2 from Robert. 3-0 from Zeb Boy. Ansa says 2-0. Matt G says 2-1. So, yeah, there's lots of positivity in the chat. Some negative Nellies. Magambo is one of those as a specialist for our negative Nellies, going for a 0-0. Kevin says 1-2. I just don't think it will be our week. Fair enough. Tony's going for a 0-0 draw. Mini Wilkie says 3-1. John's going for a 2-1. Joe's going for a 0-0. And Comrade's going for a 3-0 win there. So, lots of different predictions in the chat box there. And Holdini says 2-0 Arsenal as well. Right. A couple more questions and then we'll wrap things up. Let's go to Zeb Boy says, what are your thoughts on the Rashford versus Martinelli debate? It's a good debate. I think that Rashford is probably the slightly better player, the more accomplished player, the more consistent player. But, Martinelli is very, very close. I also think that Rashford's obviously more versatile, can play as a centre forward. So, but it's very close. I don't think it's a debate in which we need to go crazy over. But I think Rashford is probably the more accomplished forward of the two. But Martinelli is younger. It's worth remembering, and it's still got a couple of years, to get to where Rashford is in terms of where he is right now. And by the time he's the same age as Rashford, which I think is 25 now? 25, yeah. And Martinelli's 22. So, 3 years. 3 years has Martinelli got on Rashford. And Kirill, he can play centre forward, but he's not anywhere near as good at centre forward as what Rashford is. If you were to put Rashford at centre forward and Martinelli at centre forward, Rashford is miles better. But if you're comparing them both as left forwards, it's a lot closer. But 3 years has Rashford got on Martinelli. So it's not exactly like it's a fair comparison in that sense, because Martinelli's got 3 more years to get to the same level of development as Rashford has. And he could, by that point, be better than Rashford. So I think there's always going to be the option for that. Rand says, no debate. I always back my players. Okay. I mean, that's just obvious bias. I'm trying to take my Arsenal hat off at the end of the day. I could say, I'm trying to think now of if Man United have actually got any better players than us. Have they got any better players than us? A joint 11 of Man United and Arsenal for me is Ramsdale in goal, Ben White at right back, Saliba at right centre back. Based on form, I mean, Gabriel's obviously not been playing, so you'd probably pick Martinez. But based on the form of last season, I'd choose Gabriel over Martinez as well. Zinchenko over Shaw and Malacia and Reguilon. Zinchenko, I think, is better. I think you probably have to go with Casemiro over Partey because of just consistency. Casemiro is just always available to play. And then alongside him, you go with Declan Rice. So, yeah, Casemiro and Rice would be in the midfield. It's very close between Casemiro and Partey, but I edge towards Casemiro because of his availability more than anything. Like, he's not going to be available in this game. So, yeah, Casemiro with Rice in midfield, then Ødegaard as the 10. Ødegaard's better than Bruno Fernandes, in my opinion. And then I'd go Rashford left, Jesus through the middle, and Saka on the right-hand side. So they have 1, 2, maybe 3 in a combined 11. Max, if you're being really sensible. I think max 3. If you're being sensible, it's a max of 3 players of Man United got in a combined 11. Anything more than that, I think is... Yeah, Onana is very good, but I personally rate Ramsdale higher than Onana. And, I know that some people will disagree with that. That's fine. I think that's probably quite close. But arguably Raya, based on form of last season, Raya was better than Ramsdale. So you could say that Raya is actually the one that goes into the lineup. So, yeah, very interesting indeed to see what that would be. I'm not the biggest fan of combined lineups because... Yeah, it's very difficult because teams play different systems, different formations, and it's very hard sometimes to get those exactly the way that they should be. But there you go. Right, that's going to end today's show. I'm really excited to get down to the Emirates a little bit later on this afternoon. It's going to be great. I'm very much looking forward to it. It's always an absolute joy to be there, and it's been a while since I was not at the. I haven't been at the Emirates since the Nottingham Forest game, so I wasn't at the Fulham game because I was away. I didn't get to Palace because the press box was too small. I haven't been to the Emirates since the opening day. And I think me not being there against Fulham was a big, big factor. Just putting that out there into the ether. So me being there today hopefully will be a good omen for us. If you go into the game and I see any of you, I'll make sure to say hello. I look forward to getting down there and watching it. So, yeah, have a fantastic day, people. I hope that Killer Kai can bring home a fantastic performance for us and we can get some apologies in the chat box tomorrow that I hope people will be more than willing to give. So, let's see what happens. But thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I hope that you enjoy yourselves. Stay safe, stay well. And as always, up the Arsenal.